In 2025, a 27-year-old accountant in Chicago quit her job. She had a good salary, benefits, a pension plan. She quit to sell handmade candles on Etsy. Her LinkedIn post about it got 2 million views. The comments were not "how irresponsible." The comments were, "I wish I had the courage to do the same." That tells you everything about where we are right now. Because something fundamental has shifted in how people think about careers. Not just young people, not just one country, everywhere, across every age group, across every industry. The traditional career, the climb the ladder, give your best years, retire at 65 model, is losing people at a rate that no HR department or motivational poster can fix. And the reasons behind it are not laziness, not entitlement, not avocado toast. The reasons are structural. They are documented. And once you see them clearly, the only surprising thing is that it took this long. So let's look at what is actually happening with real data, real numbers, and no corporate spin. Let's start with the most basic question. What was the career promise in the first place? Because to understand why people are walking away, you need to understand what they were walking toward. The traditional career model was built on a specific set of promises. Show up reliably, work hard, stay loyal, and in return you will receive security, progression, a rising income, and eventually a comfortable retirement. That was the deal. It was not written down anywhere, but it was understood. And for roughly 3 decades after World War II, it mostly held. Companies genuinely rewarded loyalty. Pensions were defined benefit, meaning the company committed to a specific retirement income. Promotions happened on predictable timelines. Salaries grew ahead of inflation in most years. The career ladder was real, and climbing it actually led somewhere worth going. But something started changing in the 1980s, and by 2026, the original promise has been so thoroughly dismantled that it barely resembles what was originally offered. Here is the first structural reason careers have lost their appeal. The security was removed, quietly, over decades. In 1980, approximately 38% of American private sector workers had a defined benefit pension, a guaranteed retirement income, paid by the employer, regardless of market conditions. By 2024, that number had fallen to approximately 12%, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data. The pension did not disappear because companies could not afford it. Corporate profits as a share of GDP hit record highs in 2022 and 2023, according to Federal Reserve economic data. The pension disappeared because shifting retirement risk from the company to the employee was more profitable for shareholders. The 401k replaced the pension, which sounds similar, but is fundamentally different. A pension is a promise. A 401k is an account. The promise is the company's problem. The account is yours. If markets crash the year before you retire, the pension holder is protected. The 401k holder is not. The risk transfer was one of the largest and least discussed wealth redistributions in modern economic history. Workers were told they were being given more control over their retirement. What they were actually being given was more risk. And a generation of workers is now approaching retirement age with 400k balances that research consistently shows are dramatically insufficient. The Employee Benefit Research Institute's 2025 data shows that the median retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64 is approximately $134,000. At a standard 4% withdrawal rate, that generates $5,960 per year in retirement income. The federal poverty line for a single person in 2025 is $15,060 per year. The median near-retiree American worker is on track to retire into poverty. After 40 years of loyal career service, that is not a minor policy failure. That is a fundamental breach of the original career promise. And younger workers have watched it happen to their parents. They are not going to make the same bet. Drop a comment right now. Did your employer offer you a real pension or just a 401k? Tell me which country you are in too. Let's see the picture globally. The second structural reason is that job security became a fiction. In 2023 and 2024, the technology sector alone laid off over 260,000 workers, according to layoffs.FYI tracking data. These were not struggling companies. These were profitable companies with billions in cash reserves. Meta laid off 21,000 people while reporting record advertising revenue. Amazon laid off 27,000 people while its AWS cloud division was generating enormous profits. Google laid off 12,000 people in January 2023 and then reported strong quarterly earnings weeks later. The message these layoffs sent to every worker watching was unmistakable. Loyalty is not protection. Performance is not protection. Years of service are not protection. When the quarterly earnings call needs to look better for investors, you are a line item on a cost reduction slide. Not a person, not a contributor, a cost. And here's the detail that most coverage of these layoffs missed entirely. Many of the workers laid off in 2023 had been told explicitly during their hiring process that the company valued long-term employees, that it was not just a job, it was a career, a community, a mission. The gap between what companies say about loyalty and what they do when financial pressure arrives has never been more visible. Gen Z workers in particular entered the workforce already knowing this. They did not experience the old model and feel betrayed by its collapse. They were born into the collapse, and they have calibrated their expectations accordingly, which is rational, completely rational. If the company will not commit to you, why would you commit to the company? The third structural reason is that the income math stopped working. This one is the most concrete and the most damning. In 1970, the average American worker needed approximately 2.5 years of median salary to purchase a median-priced home. In 2026, they need approximately 7.5 years according to National Association of Realtors and BLS combined data. The career was supposed to build toward ownership, stability, a foundation. That foundation has tripled in cost relative to the income the career provides. The same pattern appears in education costs. In 1980, the average annual cost of a 4-year public university in the United States was approximately $3,500 in today's dollars. By 2025, that figure had risen to approximately $24,000 per year, according to College Board data. The credential required to access the career now costs 6 times more in real terms than it did when the career model was designed. Workers are starting their careers with $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 in student debt. Then they discover that the career those credentials unlocked does not pay enough to service that debt while also renting an apartment in any major city. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York's 2025 graduate outcomes data shows that approximately 40% of recent college graduates are working in jobs that do not require a college degree. They borrowed tens of thousands of dollars. They spent 4 years in education, and they got a job that did not require either. That is not a personal failure. That is a systemic one. And when people experience a systemic failure personally, they do not think the system needs adjusting. They think the system does not work for them, which leads them to look for something that does. The fourth reason is what researchers are now calling the meaning crisis in work. And this one is harder to quantify but no less real. Gallup has been measuring employee engagement globally since 2000. Their 2025 State of the Global Workplace Report shows that only 21% of employees worldwide are engaged at work. 21%. That means roughly 4 out of every 5 workers globally are either disengaged or actively disengaged from their jobs. Actively disengaged means they are not just checked out. They are unhappy enough that their attitude is affecting people around them. This is not a 2025 phenomenon. Gallup's data shows engagement has never exceeded 25% in their entire 25 years of measurement. The majority of workers have never been engaged in their careers. They showed up, they did the work, but they were not invested, not fulfilled, not energized by what they were doing. For decades, that was acceptable because the financial rewards were sufficient compensation for the absence of meaning. The pension was real, the security was real, the salary growth was real. You could trade meaning for security and come out ahead. But now the security is gone, the pension is gone, the salary growth has not kept pace with costs. And you are still supposed to trade your meaning, your time, your health, your relationships. For what exactly? That question does not have a good answer anymore. And millions of people are responding to that lack of answer by refusing to organize their entire lives around a career that cannot fulfill its original promises. Now let's talk about what people are doing instead. Because walking away from the career model does not mean doing nothing. It means doing something different. The gig economy employed approximately 73 million Americans in 2025, according to Statista research data. That number has grown every single year since 2017, without exception. But the gig economy is only part of the picture. The creator economy, people building audiences and generating income through content, courses, newsletters, and communities, generated an estimated $250 billion globally in 2024, according to Goldman Sachs research. Solo consulting and freelancing among former corporate professionals is growing at approximately 15% annually, according to MBO Partners research data. Small business formation in the United States hit record highs in 2020, 2021, and remained elevated through 2024 and 2025, according to US Census Bureau business formation statistics. People are not becoming lazy. They are becoming entrepreneurs, freelancers, creators, consultants. They are building income streams that they control, that cannot be eliminated by a quarterly earnings call, that do not require 40 years of loyalty to deliver a retirement that falls below the poverty line. They are not rejecting work. They are rejecting a specific model of work that stopped delivering on its promises. Now here is the global dimension of this shift, because this is not just an American story. In the United Kingdom, the Office for National Statistics reported in 2025 that self-employment and freelance work had grown to represent approximately 15% of the total workforce. In Australia, the ABS reported that independent contracting grew by 11% between 2022 and 2025. In Germany, despite a cultural tradition of strong employer-employee relationships, the number of solo self-employed workers grew by 8% between 2021 and 2024, according to the German Federal Statistical Office. Across every major English-speaking economy and across much of Europe, the same pattern is visible. Traditional career employment is losing share. Independent work is gaining it. This is not a trend driven by economic necessity alone. Research consistently shows that a significant portion of people choosing independent work could return to traditional employment. They are choosing not to. A 2024 McKinsey survey of independent workers found that 67% said they preferred independent work over traditional employment, even when traditional employment was available to them. They are not doing gig work because they cannot get a job. They are doing it because they looked at the career on offer and decided it was not worth the terms. Comment below right now. Are you currently in a traditional career, freelancing, or thinking about making a switch? Tell me, honestly. I want to know what people are actually doing out there. Now, let's be honest about the other side of this picture, because independent work and the gig economy are not perfect alternatives. They come with real costs. No employer-sponsored health insurance, no paid sick leave, no unemployment safety net in most jurisdictions, no employer pension contributions, income volatility that makes financial planning genuinely difficult. The gig economy in particular has been documented by multiple academic studies and government reports to transfer significant risk from companies to workers. The worker bears the cost of downtime, equipment, insurance, and retirement, saving entirely independently. For many people, especially those with dependents or health conditions, that risk profile is not workable. The picture is not that independent work is better than careers in all circumstances. The picture is that the traditional career has deteriorated enough that millions of people are now willing to accept the risks of independence rather than the risks of corporate employment. When your alternative is a job with no pension, insecure tenure, stagnant real wages, and 60 hours of weekly commitment for 40 hours of pay, the gig economy starts to look comparatively reasonable. That comparison tells you more about the deterioration of the career than it does about the appeal of the gig economy. So what does the historical record tell us about where this goes? Economic history shows that labor markets go through periodic structural reorganizations. The shift from agricultural to industrial employment in the late 19th and early 20th century was enormously disruptive. The shift from manufacturing to service employment in the second half of the 20th century was equally disruptive. Each transition produced a period of significant uncertainty, new institutional frameworks, and eventually a new equilibrium that distributed the gains and risks differently than the previous model. We are in the middle of another transition right now. The career model, as designed in the post-war period, is not the permanent natural state of work. It was a specific institutional arrangement that worked well under specific conditions. Those conditions have changed, and the institutional arrangement is changing with them. What replaces it is not yet fully formed, but the historical pattern suggests that the new model will eventually develop the institutional frameworks that the current gig economy lacks. Portable benefits, income smoothing mechanisms, new forms of collective bargaining appropriate for independent workers. Several countries are already experimenting with exactly these frameworks. The United Kingdom introduced IR35 reforms to address the taxation and rights of independent workers. France created the auto-entrepreneur legal category to give independent workers access to social protections. The European Union has been developing platform worker directive legislation to extend employment protections to gig workers. The institutional response is happening. It is slower than the economic shift. It usually is, but the direction is clear. The career as we knew it is not coming back in its original form. What is coming is something different, something still being built. And the people who understand that transition most clearly will be best positioned to navigate it, not by mourning the old model, not by pretending the new one is perfect, but by understanding what is actually happening. In the data, in the history, in the structural forces that make the career promise harder to keep with every passing year. The 27-year-old accountant who quit to sell candles is not the story. She is the data point. And there are millions more just like her, all of them doing the same calculation, all of them arriving at the same answer. The career as promised no longer adds up, and until it does again, they are going to keep looking for something that does. Subscribe to the channel, The Wealth Ledger.